Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we've got the crossbar hitting Chicago Bears ready to beat up on the Detroit Lions. And because the Daddy Mac is back. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The Blackhawks, the big squad is terrible. So you might as well save some dollars and go see a super fun time at the beautiful BMO Harris Bank Center in Rockford, Illinois. Less than 90 minutes from the city limits and fun for the whole family. Head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, this was a fun game.
I'll just say this. It feels great, absolutely great, to sit here and say we have a win against an NFC North team.
It's been a while.
The last time they won against an NFC North team, Halloween of 2016. So this is the first time they have won against an NFC North team since the Cubs won the World Series. Did you get to see the Tribune today at all? Did you read the Tribune at all?
I didn't.
So before we go any further, I want to share some interesting stats with you, if you don't mind me sharing.
Oh, please share. Share away.
So it is about the Bears versus the NFC North going back to 2013. So that's a number of seasons, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and this year. So yeah, that's a good number of seasons. The Bears going into this game were 6-25 against the NFC North. 6-25. 3-7 versus the Vikings. 1-9 against the Lions until today. And 2-9 versus Green Bay.
How do we have a better record against the Packers than we do against the Lions?
I don't know. And here's the other weird thing. The overall records for all NFC North teams against NFC North teams, the Lions have the most wins, 21. More than Green Bay.
Well, I mean, they're a team that does really well in their division and then sucks against everybody else. It's like some weird, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just this weird thing that they do. It's like the Lionisms.
It is weird. It's still weirder to think about that Aaron Rodgers has less wins against the NFC North than Matthew Stafford does, though keep in mind, Rodgers has missed some time in those seasons. And I mean, the Vikings have kind of had his number recently. So, you know, I guess that makes sense a little bit. It's still kind of surprising. The Vikings overall are 16, 14, and 2 against the North, which is just a few games above 500. But, you know, all those records are far and away better than the Bears record versus the NFC North. And also, according to this article, Steve Rosenblum wrote it, they have the worst division record in football, even worse than the Cleveland Browns.
That's sad.
It is sad. I also did a little math, And I think it was going back to the 2015 season. I tweeted this a few days ago. I know Big Dave retweeted this. Since it was a few days ago, I have to look at the context of the tweet, but I looked at record versus NFC North and record versus everybody else, whether it was NFC South, NFC East, AFC South, whatever. Just any team not in the NFC North. And I compared the records the past few seasons. Let's see, start of 2017, so really not that long, but since the start of 2017, that's a season and a half. The Bears are 10-9, or 10-5. I'm sorry, they're 10-5 versus non-NFC North teams. Coming in today, they were 0-7.
Everything changes now. We have a real NFL coach. We have a real NFL
And
coach.
Nagy is 2 division wins away from tying Fox's NFC North record.
Yeah, he's already just destroying John Fox. I think I saw that he's already has as many 30-point performances in this season than John Fox had in his entire tenure with the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
In a half a season.
That doesn't surprise me. I can't remember one game they scored over 30 points with John Fox. Maybe it was a game against the Bengals where the defense did a lot, but other than that, I really could not tell you right off the top of my head when they scored 30 or more under John Fox.
It was 3 in 3-year span, so somewhere along the way he had 3.
Surprised there was that many.
But before we talk about this game, I want to give a few minutes to a Mitch Trubisky hater. His name is Mike Lombardi. No relation to Vince Lombardi, just a coincidence of names. But he spent a long time in the NFL with the Browns, the Eagles, the Raiders, the Patriots, and now he writes for The Athletic. Here is what he had to say about our quarterback. Quote, "No, I'm not buying Mitchell Trubisky. You couldn't get me to buy Mitchell Trubisky if you had him on a discount rack at Filene's basement. There's no chance. There's no chance. He can't throw the ball inbounds half the time. I mean, it's a joke. I was in Chicago this week and all I saw was Trubisky jerseys, and I'm thinking you people are crazy. You're going to be selling these in like 3 years. There's no way." So I wanted to talk about Mike Lombardi very quickly. Mike Lombardi was the general manager and vice president of the Cleveland Browns for the 2013 and 2014 seasons before he was let go. And these are his NFL drafts. In 2013, the 2013 draft, the Browns had the number 6 overall pick in the first round. They chose defensive lineman Barkevius Mingo. They passed on Sheldon Richardson, the Pro Bowler. And they had a third rounder, number 68 overall. They chose cornerback Leon McFadden, passing on the Honey Badger. Then they had a 6th rounder, number 75 overall, and Janoris Slaughter, who was a safety that didn't play at all. And they passed on Tony Jefferson and AJ Boye, who both have made Pro Bowls. And then if you think that draft was bad, he said, "You thought that was bad? Here, why don't you hold my beer?" And then he had the 2014 draft. In the 2014 draft, they had the number 8 overall pick in the first round. They chose cornerback Justin Gilbert, passing on Kyle Fuller, Aaron Donald, CJ Mosley, Zach Martin, Odell Beckham. Those were other first rounders that they passed on. And then he had a second first round pick, number 22 overall. And he drafted quarterback Johnny Manziel, passing on other quarterbacks such as Teddy Bridgewater, Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Tom Savage and AJ McCarron.
Oh, I remember that very, very well.
And then his second round pick, number 35 overall, he chose Joel Bitonio, offensive lineman, passing on Jack Mehort and Trey Turner, who both have been very good in this NFL. And he had one third rounder, number 71 overall, and he chose Christian Kirksey, linebacker, passing on Telvin Smith, the Pro Bowl linebacker. And if that wasn't enough for you, in the year 2000, he was the senior executive of player personnel for the Los Angeles Raiders or Oakland Raiders. I forget where they were in 2000. But for the Raiders, he was the senior executive of player personnel. That was the year that they passed on Tom Brady 6 times. But who did they choose in the first round with the 17th overall pick? A kicker. He chose a kicker in the first round. And this is Mike Lombardi, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mike Lombardi, the guy who's hating on your quarterback. Maybe if you look at his record of things he's done, maybe it's a good thing he doesn't like your player, because that's probably a bad sign.
Oh, I saw his tweet getting roasted by many Bears fans, and I think it's going to get roasted even worse after today's game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's hilarious. Is like, so you have this quote hot take, and you roast a quarterback, and then the quarterback, that said quarterback, goes out and has a day like Mitch Trubisky had today, where he had an almost perfect quarterback rating, threw for 355 yards, threw for 3 touchdowns, and ran for another one.
You know, I would argue, before we get into the details all about today's game, I would argue that this was Trubisky's just flat-out best game in the NFL. I know he had the 6 touchdown passes against Tampa Bay. I know he's had some other really good games. But in terms of his throws and just hitting right on the money and just making this offense work like a symphony, I would say this was his best game by far. He was throwing dimes.
I will 100% agree with you, because he had that amazing, like, once in a lifetime type game against Tampa Bay. But Tampa Bay's defensive backfield, their front 7, they're solid, but those defensive backs are bad. I mean, it was just an unfair advantage there. But the Lions going into this game were the number 3 pass defense in the league. This was not a scrub defense that you beat. This isn't the Jets, where, again, their front 7 was good and their defensive backs were bad. This was a team with the number 3 pass defense in the NFL, and going into this game, and you beat them so bad that they were fighting each other.
I mean, you look outside a few plays where, like, Anthony Miller was wide open like no other. There were a number of throws where our targets were covered pretty well, but he was just hitting the dots. I think one of his best throws was incomplete, and that was the throw to the end zone early in the game where it was just tipped away. That was a fantastic play by the defender, because he was covering him so well, but that ball was perfectly placed. And I can't remember if it was Miller or Robinson he was targeting, but do you know what throw I'm talking about?
I'm not sure that one. There was the one to Taylor Gabriel in the first quarter. That was his first incomplete pass. And that was a beautiful pass. It's just he threw to a guy that's 5'8". And if he would have thrown to Allen Robinson, who's taller, that would have totally been a touchdown.
And maybe, I think, you know what, I think that was the play. You're right. It was Taylor Gabriel, but it was like, you know, towards the back of the end zone. It was a deep throw. Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
It was a beautiful. Yeah, it was an absolutely beautiful throw. It was the defender had, you know, it was really good coverage by the cornerback.
And it was kind of a mismatch.
There was no way that it could have been intercepted. That ball was either being caught or was going incomplete. And those are beautiful plays when it's a deep ball, because, I mean, that's, if you can't make that catch, then you want it to go incomplete. You don't want it to be broken up. You don't want it to be intercepted. And it was an absolutely beautiful throw. And that was the only incompletion that Mitch threw in the first quarter.
I mean, there's every game it seemed like, I mean, obviously this is true, not just seemed like, but for a matter of fact, every game that Trubisky has played in, he's always had a number of really bad throws. Can you really think of a really bad throw in this game by him?
There was one. There was one he overthrew a guy, but other than that, it was an absolutely perfect game from Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, and I mean,
And
he even underthrew that one touchdown to Allen Robinson a little bit, but it was good enough for Robinson to adjust and make the catch. So everything was working.
yeah, everything was great. He stayed in the pocket really well. The only times he went scrambling were times when he had big chunks of yards there. And there was that one where he ran for the first down, and the Lions player shoved him out of bounds, got the 15-yarder. And the beautiful thing of that is, who was the first person that got in that defender's face?
Trubisky?
Anthony
himself.
Miller. No, it was Anthony Miller.
Wait, really? I thought
Anthony-
Trubisky got
yeah.
in his face.
Anthony Miller was the first one there.
I gotta
Little
rewatch
Anthony
that.
Miller. It was great. It was great. That guy, he is just like, he has no fear, and he was a perfect pick. And he's a guy I'm so glad they traded up to get, because he brings so much to this team. The attitude, the hard work, just the style of play fits into this offense. Fantastic work, by Brian Pace getting Anthony Miller.
Okay, yeah, I see the replay now. Trubisky got in his face too, kind of right around the same time, but Miller was definitely there first.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Usually you see an offensive lineman get in there, but Anthony Miller was right there.
Little Anthony Miller.
And when Michael Lombardi was the one bashing Mitch Trubisky, it was Tariq Cohen that was right there, online backing him up. So everybody has Mitch Trubisky's back. He has this team, and he's doing great things, and I know there's still people that don't like Mitch Trubisky, whether it's nationally or Bears fans. Go back and look. Other than that brief, Eric Kramer spell that we had, Mitch Trubisky is the greatest quarterback that most of us have ever seen play in a Chicago Bears uniform.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely the most fun to watch. I'll say that. He's doing a lot of things well, even though there's a lot of stuff to work on. Seeing the accuracy so improved today it was just great. It was really awesome, because you felt like you really got to see what this kid can do. He was known for his accuracy, and he finally showed that off. Like, for a full game. You saw a lot of, chunks of it in different games, but this was really a full game of showing how accurate he is. It was great. And, you talked about Trubisky having the team. I'm not an Uber Cutler hater by any means, but you can't tell me that Cutler had the same respect from his teammates that Mitch Trubisky does right now. Or at least some of them.
Not. Absolutely not. I mean, he was. I'm not a Jay Cutler hater either, but I mean, other players that played with him have said as much, that they didn't like him. I mean, hell, Brian Urlacher didn't like him. But there's people don't dislike Mitch Trubisky. His teammates love him.
And I feel like not only Mitch Trubisky, but you look at the way they interact with each other on social media, I just feel like every teammate has the other teammate's back on this team. They love playing with each other. Some of those old Bears teams, not only just with Cutler, but with other players too, you didn't always see it. Whether it was Robbie Gould saying there was stuff in the locker room and there were things against Robbie Gould and, Brandon Marshall, there were some problems there, and Jarrell Freeman, all that stuff. But you're not really seeing any of that right now with this team under Matt Nagy.
No, you're not. This is a team. I mean, winning cures a lot. Winning cures a lot. But even when the Bears were winning, they were still a divided team, because it was one side of the ball that carried things. This team is not one side carrying it. I mean, they're both carrying the special teams, but we'll get to that, in a bit. But the offense is playing well, the defense is playing well, and there's no room for somebody to attack somebody saying they're not pulling their own weight.
Yeah, no, you're getting contributions from all sides of the ball. I mean, again, outside the special teams, defense, offense, you saw them contribute greatly. Khalil Mack was back. You saw the pressure on the QB. I mean, that was a thing of beauty. That makes what? 16 quarterback sacks for the Lions in 2 weeks? Yeesh. 6 today, 10 the last week? Imagine being that.
So people are beating up on Mitch Trubisky, and he's on pace. If he has a second half like his first half, which he's already on pace to be better second half based on today's game, he will surpass the Bears' single season passing yards record, which is currently at 3,838. He's on pace for over 4,000.
I take it Cutler holds the record?
No.
Eric
Kramer.
Eric Kramer, okay.
Eric Kramer. So in 1995, were you like 2?
I was 1.
1. Jay Cutler was second, third, fourth, and fifth. Then Grossman, then Billy Wade.
1963 champion Billy Wade.
It was the year before, it was the 62. I guess it would have been 63 championship. Jim
he was
Harbaugh.
on the team.
Yeah. Jim Harbaugh, then Jay Cutler, then Eric Kramer, then Kyle Orton, then Sid Luckman. So he is on pace. So as of right now, if the season were to end today, he would be in the top 20 in all-time Bears passing performances for a season.
I don't know if that's cool and sad, or just more sad or more cool, but wow.
Touchdowns. He's on pace to have the most touchdown passes of any Bears quarterback in a single season ever.
Who holds that record?
Eric Kramer, 1995, at 29. Let's see. I'm trying to look through the highest quarterback rating but actual quarterbacks.
Well, I got some stats here that'll make people's eyes open if you want to hear them. While you're looking for that.
Sure, go ahead.
So in the past 3 games, Trubisky has 6 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, 1 interception. He's turned the ball over once in the past 3 games. Now, in the past 6 games, 17 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 1,713 passing yards in just the last 6 games, 256 rushing yards. If you take the average rating and you calculate it, it's at 113.9. And you have a number of games in there with 300 plus passing yards. This goes back to the Tampa Bay game. It's the Tampa Bay game up till now.
So the highest quarterback rating for a season, and I had to filter through because there was a lot of running backs and things throwing and wide receivers throwing. But as far as quarterbacks go that played a whole season, Sid Luckman in 1943 had 107.5. Then after that, it was I guess Brian Hoyer had a short streak there. Jim McMahon had a 97.8. So Mitch Trubisky will likely finish either first or second in quarterback rating. So this is on pace in his second year to have the greatest quarterback single season in Chicago Bears history, and people are still mad at him.
Past 2 games, I can't be mad at him. I mean, he's showing much more good than bad. And of course, you're still going to see some gaps here or there. He's a young quarterback. This is his first full season. But the amount of positives you're seeing right now, I mean, that really speaks volumes. You look at the plain stats, they'll tell you. You do the old eye test. That'll tell you. I mean, today, you didn't see him scramble a lot and just kind of, when you saw him scramble early on, he kind of looked like a deer in headlights. He was poised out there. He was protected better than he was the week before. I'll give him that. But, he looked confident out there from start to end. And Trubisky really set the tone for the Bears today. He was setting the tone that they were going to win and they were going to dominate regardless of the score, because the score does not reflect this game at all.
No, there was some boneheaded things the Bears did to make this game seem even closer.
And some of it was just poor officiating too.
Yes, there was poor officiating on multiple accounts. There was conservative play calling. There was boneheaded special teams plays. But overall, the Bears absolutely manhandled the Lions to the point where I already read an article from an actual, media publication calling for Matt Patricia to be fired at the end of the year and not get a second season.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. I've seen it on Twitter. The articles pretty much saying the same thing.
Yeah, between the previous head coach of the Lions didn't do anything great, but he had that team ready to play. They played solid, and they had a winning record for multiple seasons.
I think they should have held on to Caldwell. I think firing him was a mistake. I'll be completely honest.
I think so too. I think that was a mistake. I mean, was he the coach that was going to take them to the next level? No. But I think he was a coach that had them ready to play, and they played solid, and they were a team that you couldn't take lightly. But Matt Patricia, this team is the dumb. We always looked at the Detroit Lions. They were the Browns before the Browns were the Browns.
Yeah, they were.
And everybody, they were the laughing stock. And Caldwell made them an actual team that you had to prepare for, and you had to play tough and to beat them.
Oh, absolutely.
And under Matt Patricia, and things might change, but so far under a half season with Patricia, they've gone back to being the boneheaded Lions that are laughable. I mean, I tweeted out, it got a lot of likes about they should just play the Benny Hill music over the top of the Lions.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I mean, you look at the Lions, and outside of a great win, dominating win against the Patriots, what has Matt Patricia showed Lions fans that they should believe in him? I haven't seen anything. I mean, I'm not a Lions fan. I don't watch him as religiously as Lion fans do, but you see coaches make impacts, and you see ones that really don't. And I haven't seen Matt Patricia do anything overly impactful so far. I know it's early. I know they traded away Golden Tate. I know they're a little banged up, but you look at some of the other games that they've lost. I don't know. He has not convinced me yet. I don't know if declaring him to be fired right now is really necessary. That might be a little too premature, but if I were a Lions fan, I would not be too thrilled with the way things have unfolded.
No, I wouldn't either. I mean, I think a big mistake Matt Patricia made about talking about the Golden Tate trade was he didn't say, he should have either just been like, internally we made a decision that was the best decision for this team and just left it at that, or said what exactly are they doing? Hey, we didn't think that we were going to re-sign the guy, so we were trying to get what we could get because we weren't going to get a third round compensatory pick. And even if we did, it wouldn't be until, the 2020 draft. You gotta say one or the other. And he was just like, he hemmed and hawed and said some other things. And you know what? I sort of understand it. Is they realized that they weren't good enough to do anything this season. They knew he was going to leave in free agency. So you might as well get something for him. And it was basically them waving the white flag. And they don't want to say that.
No, they clearly don't. And I think that this loss for the Lions, unless they go on a massive run, it pretty much eliminates their playoff chances, especially in this division.
Yeah, I mean, they already got beat up by the Vikings. They got beat up by the Bears. I mean, they're just not a very good team, and honestly, trading Golden Tate was the right call. It was the right call. I mean, did they think they would tank this bad afterwards? No, clearly not. But they realized, did some soul searching and realized they were not good enough to do anything. And if they were in a hunt for a playoff spot, I'm sure they wouldn't have traded him. But they knew the reality. They saw the writing on the wall. This is not a good team. What's the point of keeping him when you can get a third rounder for a rental?
Exactly. I mean, you look at some of the lack of discipline on that Lions team. That's what really gets me. I think that's what angers a lot of Lions fans too. Just a huge lack of discipline. And I mean, they made some boneheaded plays. Nothing like uber terrible in my opinion, but just the way the game was called, I just felt like there was a real lack of aggression, because while the game really wasn't close, the Lions still had a chance to get back in the game, and I don't think they were making the right calls out there. You saw either a lot of running or a lot of passing. There wasn't a lot of great mixing up, and the Bears were able to take advantage of that and again, destroy their quarterback like the Vikings did the other week.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and a lot of it comes down to they have one of the highest paid players in the league playing quarterback for them, and Matt Stafford is not good. He is exactly the type of quarterback that is the most frustrating. I put him in the same boat as Andy Dalton and Joe Flacco, where where you're drafting, they're good enough to get you to the middle of the pack and maybe even scrape the playoffs, but not good enough to do anything else other than, the fluke Joe Flacco things. But overall, they're mediocre quarterbacks that can light it up every so often. And they make your team good enough where you can't get a solid draft pick and draft a real quarterback. But if you let them go in free agency, then you're just going to suck. So you just keep overpaying to keep a mediocre quarterback. And then these guys end up getting paid so much money and they're not that good. I mean, Matt Stafford's stats look good, but if you break it down, he's like the ultimate collector of garbage time stats.
I think it's more accurate to say that he's like Andy Dalton. I think I would really agree with the Andy Dalton comparison, especially when, there's a lot of beating up of just really bad teams, but when they get into a big game, they don't always step up. I mean, Joe Flacco, yeah, you can call him Joe Fluco, but at least that guy did step up at some point and win a Super Bowl. And, there are times when I saw a lot of Jay Cutler and Matt Stafford comparisons and said, sometimes it's kind of true.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely true. Except people like Matt Stafford and they don't like Jay Cutler.
Right.
And I think it's because Matt Stafford's always smiling and Jay Cutler's always like, whatever that face is he makes.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'll give Matt Stafford this. He's got a pretty good arm. And, I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback, but, I think when it all evens out, the circumstances and whatnot, he's just kind of middle of the road.
All right. Hot take moment. Mm-hmm. Eli Manning is Joe Flacco with a more famous name.
Well,
it's hard to argue with me.
I mean, if we're looking at regular season, yeah.
And then he had those fluke playoff runs and where he just looked like the greatest player ever. And then Other than that, he has just been mediocre. And in fact, the last several years, he's been downright terrible.
Yeah, no, he's been bad. He's been bad. But it's more accepting of him because he won those 2 rings. But yeah, I mean, I never really considered him an elite quarterback. I just always considered him the guy that if you get him in the playoffs, he can do just about anything as well as anybody. But yeah, I mean, you look at regular season stats. Yeah, I never considered him overly elite.
And there's people that say he's a Hall of Famer. Bull. You can't put a guy that led the league in interceptions multiple seasons in the Hall of Fame. I don't care how many rings he has.
No, I mean, Peyton Manning's a Sherlock all-time great, but Eli Manning, no. He'll always have his 2 rings, and Giants fans will always have those rings he won for them, but yeah, no, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
Like, I'm fine with Eli Manning going to the Hall of Fame to support his brother when he gets inducted.
Oh, sure.
But I mean, to have a shrine in himself, like there in the bust, no.
You know what they'll do is that at that induction, they'll replay that clip of Eli Manning in the suite when Peyton won his Super Bowl at the Broncos. He just has that blank staring into space look.
That is so good. That should have been a bigger meme.
Oh, I know. It was even my profile picture right after the Super Bowl on Facebook for a number of weeks. It was priceless.
But going back to the Bears in this game, offensive wise, I mean, the offensive line played really well as far as the pass protection, keeping.
Oh, it's fantastic in that department.
For the most part, the play calling was really good. I'll put an asterisk there. Mitch looked great. Mitch looked fantastic.
Would you say he was player of the game?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I took the Twitter poll. I don't know if you saw it. And, I'm looking at the results now. 73% voted out of 110 votes for Trubisky as player of the game. I think I could agree with that.
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of people that played really well, but he was the creme de la creme. But the knocks there are they could not get the power run game going when they needed to run the clock out at the end of the game with Jordan Howard.
No, he got no blocking.
Yeah, he just had nothing. And he's a guy that needs that lane to open up for jump cuts and things like that. And he just back cuts. He's just not getting anything. And he's not a guy. He needs to have some hole open up or else he's just not getting anything. And part of that is they were gearing up to stop the run. And part of it was that Bears offensive line most of the game, they're in the shotgun formation and they're pass protecting. They're just not beating up on that defensive line and getting the dominant, blocks at the end of the games, once you wear down that defensive line. And they're not used to those types of play calls. And that's something they're going to have to work on because we're going into the middle of November. We're in Chicago. It's that weather is going to catch up to you and you're going to need to run the ball efficiently.
Yeah, I think the run game was the least productive of everything today. And again, that's not necessarily the back's fault, but yeah, I mean, the line was not great with the run game as it hasn't been for a while. And this is really where you're going to miss Kyle Long. And there was really no need for it overall. You wanted to see the run game do better to kill clock at the end. There's no question. But, luckily Mitch was so good today that he was basically able to take care of everything. I mean, he picked up 2 huge first downs near the end of the game. One with the arm, one with the legs. I mean, he pretty much had to take it in his own hands because the running game was not really doing much. And if we're just going to get the negatives out of the way, I might as well do that while we're on it because there's a lot more positives to talk about. But there were 2 particular drives that do involve, the running game and Mitch that I did not like. The first time was they got the turnover, the fumble, and Parkey had already missed a field goal, and those 2 extra points. And it was still at the point of the game where, while the Bears were up by a good amount, the Lions still had a chance to make it a game. And it was run, and the run was just getting stuffed, and they didn't throw once. And you didn't want to trust your kicker, even though it was like inside the 30, because he had no confidence whatsoever today after already missing those. And sure enough, he hit the upright again, and you came away with no points. I don't know why Nagy didn't throw at least once there. That's not where you were trying to kill clock.
Yeah, and even earlier than that, and I have that in my notes as well, even earlier than that is that last drive of the first half is where you had them on the ropes. And they even alluded to Matt Nagy saying that he wasn't going to take his foot off the gas. And the first opportunity he had to really go for a kill shot in the first half and score some more points is they just ran the ball. And luckily, Matt Patricia was even worse at clock management than Matt Nagy is. And they didn't call the timeout, and they just kind of wanted to let the half run out. And I'm like, why wouldn't they try to get the ball, score some points, and then get the ball at halftime?
Right. Yep.
The second half, sorry. So, the kickoff of the second half is that's how you get momentum. The Lions really could have shifted that right then and there, but they blew it, and Matt Nagy got away with being conservative there. And there was like 3 drives where he turned into John Fox.
Yeah, no, the one I referenced was definitely one of those. I almost, in my mind, was going, "Oh, my monkey's back," thinking of John Fox during that. I will never not love John Fox's monkey.
It's so John Fox.
He died of a heat stroke.
But yeah, it was
okay. Thanks for sharing.
But yeah, it was Matt Nagy just at some points just got really conservative, and I don't understand why he does that. Mitch has not made many mistakes, and he didn't make. There was only one big mistake he made in this game, and that was that one that was almost a safety, and he didn't have anything. And at that point, you've either got to tuck it and run, which he didn't have a lane to do, or just throw it away. Throw it at somebody's feet. He tried to do too many read progressions at the goal line, and at the goal line, this has got to be a Matt Nagy play call, and this has got to be a Mitch understanding is when you're at the goal line, if you can't run the ball to push the line forward and give yourself some breathing room, is you've got to make quick passes, something quick to a hot receiver, no read, just quick throw, give yourself some breathing room, because you cannot sit back in the pocket and do read progressions from the 1 yard line.
Well, that was the second possession I was going to reference. I'm really glad you brought that up in talking about just kind of the few negatives here. That was where it pretty much the opposite of the other situation I talked about. And I know it sounds like sheer nitpicking, but that's where you really had to pound the ball, because at that point you were pinned back and you were trying to burn some clock, and there were 2 incompleted passes. So therefore you really didn't burn any clock on that possession. So, and that all kind of started when, frankly, Prince Amukamara should have just batted that ball down and not intercepted it. As soon as he caught it, I'm like, please just let go of it. Don't intercept it, because it was 4th down. But, it didn't end up hurting the Bears' win chances at all. But it was just one of those things.
Yeah, it was, it's one of the things you go back and you watch and you learn from. But, that's a learning, something you learn for Mitch Trubisky, and that's something you learn from Matt Nagy, that you just got to be better at. But other than that is, you had a really, really good game. And I think that's all the nitpicky I had as far as the offense goes. But otherwise, the play calling was great. Against a really good pass defense is they had the wide receivers played great when there was good coverage. Mitch had great throws against good coverage. And then there was other times where the scheme just opened up a guy wide open. and they found the soft spots and took advantage.
Especially with Anthony Miller. You see what that kid could do, and I think it's pretty obvious that that kid's got a bright career ahead of him. It goes to show as well how much more dangerous this offense is when you have Allen Robinson as a target. I mean, what a welcome back for that guy.
Oh yeah, it was so nice to have him back and Khalil Mack. You realize they don't need an Allen Robinson to be able to do things, but when you have him, it makes it a whole lot easier because he's a matchup nightmare for people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they've been showing good things without him, but he just makes it all that much better. You can agree with that.
How do you disagree
don't.
with that? Other than today, we haven't really seen what he can do yet. Because a lot of Chicago fans, and myself included, is, how much have you actually seen of him other than highlight reels? I mean, you haven't seen much, partly because he's been injured and partly because he played for a Jaguars team that we don't see very often.
Right. But today we got a great taste of his capabilities.
And we're starting to see what he looks like when he's fully healthy. And to have a wide receiver that, gets that kind of yards after the catch, that's great. We don't often see a wide receiver that gets yards after the catch. They make the catch and, either go straight down or get 2, 3, 4 yards and go down. But to actually see them, take one to the house, that's what we've been yearning for.
I mean, think about how night and day this receiver core is from last year.
Oh,
my goodness.
I mean, when a guy before his injury, the number one receiver you had was Kevin White. And right now he's been surpassed on the depth chart by a 7th round pick. And, he hasn't even, they don't even need him. He just sits on in the active, like he's not on the active roster. He's on the 53, but he's not on the active game day roster because you don't need him. And he was your number one wide receiver going into last season before he got injured.
Tell me this. Are you sitting around thinking about how we let Cam Meredith go? Because I'm not.
I'm not going to lie, is when the Bears let him go, I didn't want to, I wasn't beating them up, but I didn't understand it because I was like, or at least, tender him at a higher tender. I was like, if you let him go, you let him go, but at least have him at a higher tender. And, I just felt, but when they brought in Taylor Gabriel and they brought in Allen Robinson, I was like, all right. I mean, I definitely like those guys better. Anthony Miller, when they drafted him, I was like, okay, I really like this pickup. And I was like, but I thought Cam Meredith would do something special down in New Orleans. And he did nothing and then got hurt.
Look, I wasn't happy when Cam Meredith was let go originally, but now I'm looking back at it thinking, well, if this core stays healthy, I don't think we're going to be regretting it too much. I give him credit. He did some good here, but with the guys we have now, I think we're good.
I mean, right now, we are starting to see our general manager, Ryan Pace, hitting his stride. I think there was some learning curve at the beginning because he was so young and so inexperienced. And I think he's starting to really figure it out. And you are seeing shrewd moves, whether it's letting guys go, paying certain guys. And it's starting to really show what he can do. There's a lot of mistakes, but those were in the first couple years. The last couple of years, you're starting to see things pay off. Building from the draft. You haven't even seen Adam Shaheen, who they're very high on, and he's going to come back soon. And that's going to be an added threat. I mean, look what Ben Broniker did. I mean, Deion Sims sucked, and you're going to let him go, obviously. But Adam Shaheen is going to do way bigger things than Ben Broniker, and he played well today. Trey Burton was a great signing.
You're going to have two great targets at tight end when you have Shaheen and Burton.
Yeah, I mean, the red zone target with Adam Shaheen is going to be fantastic.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it a lot because I am a fan of both those guys, a really big fan. And, you know, Trey Burton, he may not be a big blocker, but when you have another added target like he is, that's great for a young quarterback. And you've seen the chemistry between those two.
And it's funny, before the season started, his former Eagle teammates were making fun of him for leaving the Eagles to go to the Bears. And how's that looking now? Is the Eagles don't look so hot, and the Bears are looking real good.
And why would you stay in a place where you're going to play second fiddle to Ertz when you can go start somewhere else and make more money?
Yep. Team on the rise, too.
Right. So, you know, it's silly, really. I think Burton is happy here, and I think he's glad he made this choice. He's getting the chance to play like a number one tight end. And the thing is, he's been working that way this whole season. He went into the season as the number one tight end, and he's responded with playing well.
Yeah, absolutely. He's played very, very well. And, you know, just watching Matt Nagy start to call these games, and, you know, at the beginning of the year, we were seeing guys get singled out. Like these were the Burton plays. These were the Gabriel plays. These were the Robinson plays. And now that's not the case. Now it's looking like everybody's starting to learn the offense. And just put this into perspective is they had to dumb this. I don't want to say dumb it down. They had to simplify the offense a little bit because Mitch Trubisky's in his second year. In the first year, he played in basically a high school offense with John Fox coach team. And
his monkey.
And he didn't play much college. And he was a new scheme for a young quarterback. He had to simplify things. On the off season, he's going to be able to learn all of the rest of those plays. They're going to open up that playbook, and Matt Nagy's going to have the whole offseason to reevaluate the mistakes he made because he's clearly making mistakes. But we all knew that is first-time head coaches, inexperienced play callers. They're going to make mistakes, and he's going to learn from those because he's a really smart guy. This team is looking up offensively and defensively. That I don't see any slippage there, and there's not a single starter of any game that was over 30 years old.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So yeah, offensively, I was very happy. The only things that bummed me out is they didn't push more. They didn't go for the jugular, and that's something they're going to have to do. Is just really, really make it aware, the other team aware that they don't have a hope. Don't give them any hope. That you're just going to keep pouring it on until they quit.
Yeah, now, there was one point of the game where I was not pissed at the Bears, but I was really pissed at the refs. Okay, several times, let's say that. But I would imagine that if the Bears got the ball in the second half where it was rightfully called a fumble, I cannot believe they missed that call. If they would have recovered that fumble, I guarantee you they would have scored another touchdown. I guarantee it.
Well, and the Lions wouldn't have scored a touchdown.
Exactly. So, I mean, yeah, I agree. It was too much of a game than it should have been, even though it really wasn't. But that just kind of ticked me off. Just saying. And also, Cody Parkey missing those kicks.
Do you want to jump into the special teams and beat them up a little bit, or do you want to talk defense?
Let's get all the negative out of the way so we can praise the defense.
special teams as a whole still stinks. I mean, the first thing I want to say is the one coach in the league that has been, most teams are just kicking the ball on kickoffs through the back of the end zone or into the end zone and no return. Bill Belichick has been consistent in trying to kick it to like the 1 yard line and forcing them to return it, because usually they get to the 20-yard line or less and you gain a little field position. It's very smart if you have a kicker that can do it. Matt Patricia clearly learned this from Bill Belichick, and they started kicking it short later in the game, and Mizell was returning the kicks, and he's terrible at it.
Yeah, you went from Benny Cunningham to Mizell.
And Benny Cunningham I don't think is very good either. They put him back there just because he's sure-handed, and all you want is a guy
You can
that
trust
he has
him not to bobble the ball.
Yes. And neither one of them are a returner, and you saw that the bad returns, and the fact that this team is not used to returning, and it's something you work at. I played football in high school, and when I was on special teams and when you would go to block, it's not as easy as it looks. And to make a good block and open up a lane, not as easy as it looks. And if you don't do it, because most of the kicks are just right out of bounds, and you're out of practice, and that was a sore spot. The other sore spot on the onside kick.
Oh,
they did it twice, and both times were awful. Like, what the hell was Anthony Miller doing with his karate chop of the ball?
Just let Anthony Rizzo and Chris Bryant handle the swinging at balls in the city. Don't do that, dude. I'm just like, when I saw that, I'm like, what the hell was that? All you had to do was like, just field it and go to the ground.
Yeah. And then on the second one is, I don't even know whose responsibility was to go for the ball, but everybody just watched it go, and then they watched the Lions recover it. And I was like, what the hell happened there? I think they lulled everyone to sleep and did that kick. That was terrible.
Yeah, that was really, really bad.
But the ultimate, though, in bad special teamery was the master of badness, Cody Parkey.
Doink.
Doink times 4.
Doink, doink, doink. What's the record for doinks in one game?
It has to be 4. There's nobody that could have had 4.
You know what I feel like? If you doink the ball 3 times, you should automatically get a point.
So
He's like Victor Stahlberg hitting the post like every game.
I'm fighting with Kevin Fishbane on Twitter.
What? What are you doing out there?
He's being one of those like homers that's like, oh, well, Cody Parkey's doing this, but Robbie Gould does this. And I commented, Kevin's not old enough to remember Robbie Gould's last season with the Bears. To which he replied with his stats, and I said, well, Mr. Cherry Picker, how many games did he lose? Like, how many
oh, damn.
It's, what is like stats wise, like he had a meh year, but there was so many important kicks that he missed, and he was one of the highest paid kickers in the league, and he was a headache for the team because everything that should have been staying in the clubhouse is he was running to the media with it. So if you're not being a good teammate, you're being an annoyance to the team. Team's not winning anyway, and you're paid a lot, and you're not kicking well. Why the hell would they keep you? Why?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a billion times, and I won't go over it again, but Yeah, it's kind of a sucky situation right now. You're paying Parkey a lot of money. Matt Nagy says that he's going to be the guy. He said that in the post-game show, so they're not going to cut him. But the thing is, if you cut him, and Olin Kreutz made this point earlier on the post-game show, you got to replace him with somebody, and you would replace him with somebody that wouldn't have a job right now. So that's kind of a bad situation to be in.
Well, I mean, there's everybody that loves Robbie Gould is the Giants fired a kicker and then hired a kicker that didn't have a job, and that kicker's name was Robbie Gould. So, I mean, I get the point that he's making, but you at least have to bring in kicking competition for him.
Yeah, and maybe they will, but
and
I don't know when that's going to happen.
The thing is,
they seem pretty set on him.
The thing is, kicking is, there's a lot of guys that can just kick well. It's mental. And if you got a guy that's just mentally not playing well, then that's, if you listen to Jimmy Johnson, he said, I'd cut him if he missed one kick. Jimmy Johnson would just go through kickers. You miss kick, we'll get a new kicker. His view is kickers are a dime a dozen. I mean, you ride, if you've got a guy that's an all-time great, and if he misses a couple or has a couple bad games, all right, you ride with him. But when they start losing you games or they're on this bad of a streak, I mean, missing 2 extra points and 2 short field goals, come on now. That's bad.
It's rough. Yeah. It was unbelievable. Like, you can't make it up.
No, what's worse than that is you saw him first. He started yelling at as the punter, who's the holder, and then you saw him laughing and joking on the sideline. You know what? If I was that bad, if I had that bad of a day at work, I'm not laughing and joking. I'm upset, and I'm trying to fix it.
Yeah, I would be pretty pissed at myself. I would feel so bad if that were me. And I know I can't kick for crack, but you're expected these guys to kick. So when you perform that poorly, you better expect to be reamed a bit. And I remember that last miss, that final miss that he had on that final attempt before they scored another touchdown and did a 2-point conversion, for goodness sake. But, the place was booing like I haven't heard them boo before. Okay, maybe that's not true, but yeah, they were booing pretty loudly.
This is not the first game where Matt Nagy has had to alter his play calling because he didn't trust his kicker.
Yeah, that's true.
This is multiple games where he's altered the way he's played because he can't trust his kicker to make even the shortest of field goals. And maybe you don't cut him, but you better have kicking competition in there tomorrow. And I saw somebody tweet out that there was a quote in an interview with Cody Parkey this week that said he doesn't drive down to Soldier Field to kick during the week because traffic's too bad. Well, guess what? Your kicks suck. And you better learn how to kick in that stadium. Kicking in Northbrook and kicking at Soldier Field, those are Lake Forest and Soldier Field are 2 different places. And you better...
One of the hardest places to kick is Soldier Field. You got to get it right.
Yeah, I mean, when the 49ers played at Candlestick, that was probably equally as hard. But Soldier Field's a hard... I mean, I sat there against the Jets, and I was right on the field. It was in the second row, and it was crazy, the wind patterns. Like, I've never sat like that close to the field, and just the wind patterns. You watched the flags on the field goal posts not really go anywhere, but the wind was like circling underneath. It was like, I don't even know how to describe it. So it's a hard place to kick. And if you're not driving in there and practicing on the field, then you're not doing yourself a service that you're being good at your job.
No, I mean, you got to practice there. It's not just any indoor stadium, or it's quite the opposite. And I think Coach Nagy's going to have to really make him realize that, especially after this week.
But let's switch on over to defense.
Yeah.
Defense played really well. And we saw the return of Khalil Mack, and I thought Khalil Mack had a really great game. He had a couple of sacks, but they altered their offense to try to stop him. Is after the just absolute embarrassment that they had against Minnesota, you saw that they act most of the time had a second guy back there, and trying to chip him or really slow him down. And that took a player that they could have out there catching passes and things like that, and they left them in there to try to stop Khalil Mack.
Did you see the one sack that he had where he literally just barreled by two defenders or two linemen and then easily took Matthew Stafford down? Like, he was just like pushed out of the way once, pushed out of the way again, and then just boom, tackled him. It was a thing of beauty.
Yeah, it was. I mean, he looked fantastic. He had no ill effects from that ankle. I think you had a really good game by, I mean, a lot of people are going to hate this, but I thought you had a really good game by Leonard Floyd. Even if he wouldn't have got that sack, which he did get, I thought he had a very good game.
You know what was key? Is that the announcers said Leonard Floyd's name. When you hear his name, you usually at least think, okay, he did something good, and he did.
I thought I was nervous about this game, like it was a trap game, because you're looking forward to both the Minnesota Vikings next week, where it's a primetime game, and then you go a short week on Thanksgiving against the Lions again. And you couple that with, at the beginning of the game, you had that missed tackle by Aaron Lynch, where the Lions would have got negative yards and ended up picking up a nice gain.
Yep.
And I was like, oh no, this is how it's going to start. And then after that, they just really buckled down.
Oh yeah, I mean, I thought outside that missed tackle, and there was a missed tackle by Eddie Jackson later in the game, more when the game was out of reach. But other than that, I thought the tackling today was superb. Getting to Matthew Stafford, taking him down, once again stopping the run game. They didn't let the Lions gain a lot on their plays. Yeah, sure, they converted a lot on fourth down, but you take that away. I mean, they were stuffing the Lions. Even those plays at the goal line when the Lions were first and goal, yeah, they eventually scored leaping over, but they were doing a great job at just stuffing guys and barreling them over.
Yeah, it was the defense played really hard. They got a lot of pressure on Matt Stafford, and the coverage was really tight on the Lions wide receivers, who, yeah, they don't have Golden Tate anymore, but Galladay is a very good wide receiver, and he's a big wide receiver. He's 6'4". He's way bigger than any of the cornerbacks the Bears have. And the Bears had great coverage on him.
And some of those catches he did make, that was just him being huge and reaching up.
Yeah, absolutely. There was the one that he caught, that Prince Amukamara had. It was a pretty long pass. Prince Amukamara had great coverage, but when a ball is thrown high and a 6'4" guy has to jump and use all 6'4" to get it, you really don't have a shot. That's one of those.
There's not much you can do.
Yeah, those are just ones you chalk up to. It was a great throw and a great catch. I mean, I can't jump up that high to get it. But for the most part, they had great coverage. You had another great game by Bryce Callahan or Brian Callahan, if you're an announcer.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Kyle Fuller had a great game.
Hmm.
You just saw those guys step up, and you had another great game from Roquan Smith, who's just looking like a heat-seeking missile going after.
Yeah, one sack he had was beautiful.
Um, so yeah, the Bears defense was cooking. There was you never really felt that the Lions were going to climb back in, and even when, they ended up scoring, there was the pass interference in the end zone, which was BS. And then they got another drive saving penalty that was that really weak illegal contact against Kyle Fuller. That was just that it was. I think I tweeted out that it was as weak as Taco Bell sauce.
Yes,
And
yes, you did.
that was bad, and it was a lot of just ticky tack penalties and missed calls and the onside kick, though, and missed field goals. Those were what kept the Lions in it, but you just really never felt that they were going to do anything, because every time they started to get momentum, is the Bears either stood solid as far as trying to pick up a first down with a short run, or they got pressure on Stafford, and Stafford just couldn't make good throws.
Yeah, I mean, this is as good as they've had pressure on a quarterback, I think, in weeks, like since the beginning of the season. And I mean, it makes sense because Khalil Mack is back. He hasn't played the past few games. I thought that their pressure was pretty good last week, especially in the second half, but they were able to not only put pressure on Stafford, but take him down. And that was probably my favorite part of the defense, was their ability to consistently put pressure on him.
Yeah, that's always key. And it wasn't just, it was consistent pressure. He never really fully had a clean pocket.
No, he didn't. Some of those throws he had to make really quickly as the pocket was collapsing.
Yeah, and Vic Fangio really called a good game there. The defense played well. If the defense plays like that on next Sunday, and if they play like this, is clean up those mistakes, there's no reason to think that they can't beat the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, I think Minnesota is going to be a lot tougher of a test, but if they play good football like they did this week, then yeah, they can. And I think if they beat the Minnesota Vikings, this is when people all across the board can really believe in this team being a contender. Right now, I believe that they can be a playoff team, but they got to beat one of the front runners to really prove it. And I know they are the front runner in the division, but look, the Vikings are right behind you. Green Bay is always going to be Green Bay, and then you got the Rams. If you can win a few of those games, then not only are you guaranteed like a 500 season, but you're looking pretty good for the playoffs. You win, 2 more games, you're 500. You win a few more, and you're above 500, and you're on pace to hopefully be like 10-6. And you would think 10-6 right now would get you in the playoffs. If you win 2 more against the NFC North, that'll put you at 500. Then you win some of those games you're supposed to win against bad teams. 10-6.
I mean, you need to beat Minnesota, one of those 2 games. And I think if you can do that, your chances of winning this division go up exponentially.
For sure.
You feel comfortable with beating the Lions again on Thanksgiving, because it's not like they're on the bye next week, and they're going to be playing on Sunday too. They just play the earlier game, and then they're going to be on a short rest as well. You already just beat up on them, so you got to feel good about that. If you can get this Vikings win, especially this one, you get this one out of the way, and suddenly you're 7-3 and 8-3 if you can beat the Lions, and that's that's a really good position to be in. You're sitting pretty for the playoffs.
Yeah, I would say this upcoming game against the Minnesota Vikings is probably the biggest Bears game in years. It's probably the biggest game since week 17 of 2013.
I mean, yeah, as far as importance of it, I wouldn't argue that.
Yeah.
You can't overlook anybody. You got to play this game tough. If you win these next two, you're 8-3, and you've got to assume that your game against what do you have, the 49ers and the Giants, you got to assume those are you got to assume that you're going to win those. So that's 10-3, and so that means you've got another Packers, another Vikings, and a Rams game, and those at that point, then those aren't that important. I mean, they are, but they aren't, because you're sitting at 10-3, and you don't look at those as, oh, must win. You're looking at those as they have must wins. We can play much more smoothly and comfortably.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that week 17 isn't vital. It would be nice if that last game against Minnesota in Minnesota doesn't really count for much.
You hope so. You really hope so. But yeah, I mean, this, even if the Bears lose this game to the Vikings, number one, that doesn't cost them as far as standings. I mean, they might. Did the Vikings win today?
I don't think they played today.
I mean, but really, it's even if they did win, it flip flops them a half game. But and in the grand scheme of things, this is not the year that you expect to be competing for the Super Bowl. This is the year that you're supposed to just compete, and that's what they're doing. I mean, they're competing more than most people expected them to at this point. Next year is the year that you expect bigger things.
The Vikings are on bye this week.
Okay. But
they're not even playing.
But, if you look at it, is the Bears in this offseason, even after signing Khalil Mack, et cetera, is there's easily enough dead weight you can cut, plus the extra cap room they have. They can have like $20 million still to spend in the offseason. And they don't really have many significant free agents that they need to sign. And
you build depth and you fill some small holes, and you should be good.
Upgrade in a few spots. And the thing is, and then people are saying, well, we don't have first round picks the next 2 years. Granted. And you can, and to those people I say, sure, technically you don't have 2 first round picks, but as it stands right now, is where would the Bears be picking? They're going to be picking in probably the mid 20s. And not this year, but next year they get a third. Is it this year or next year? They get a second rounder back. And the Raiders,
I feel like it's next year.
I think it's next year too. So next year, you feel confident that you're going to be at least in the mid 20s, if not in the late 20s, early 30s. That's the hope. And the Raiders are probably going to be a top 10 draft pick. So that means in reality, you traded away a late first rounder and then traded back from the first round a few spots to the second round in that second year. So really you traded a late first rounder and then traded back like 10, 15 spots for Khalil Mack.
I mean, all you really have to say is you have Khalil Mack, and that should be enough.
Such a good trade. You end up winning that worse than the Bulls won the Jimmy Butler trade.
Oh God, that whole thing.
Is there anything else Bears you want to talk?
No, I mean, I think I pretty much said my piece. I mean, you can talk forever about this game, but yeah, I mean, just to sum up my thoughts, Trubisky, great. Allen Robinson, great. The receivers, great. The defense, front seven, great. The secondary, great. Special teams, meh. Gross. But hey, it's great to have a win against an NFC North team keep it up, because you know what? I would have lost my damn mind if they would have lost to the Lions at home today.
I agree. Yeah, I absolutely agree. You know, you got to turn up that heat now. Is if you can beat Minnesota next week, and then you come back on that short week and beat the Lions again, you know, you're sitting at 8-3. 8-3 is a real nice record, especially considering considering that 2 of those 3 losses are you should have won.
Sure. Absolutely. They've yet to prove that they are a playoff team, but they proved that they are in the hunt as a first place team right now. Nothing's set in stone. There's a long way to go, and there's a team right behind you, and probably another team behind you, because Aaron Rodgers, this is when he turns it on, but you've proved that you're in the mix, well in the mix, and that no matter what, this season is a hell lot better than any season we've watched the past 5 years.
Yeah, and then, you know, you listen to Brady Quinn, the former NFL bust. You know, he's down on the Bears because they haven't beat anybody. But here's the thing, is you don't pick the teams you play. This isn't college. You know, you're not choosing to play Little Sisters of the Poor every week until that last game of the season when you play one good team. This is the NFL. Is every team can beat you on any given day. Number one. Number two is the NFL makes your schedule. Like, you don't make your schedule. You play if you did make your schedule, if you're the Bears, are you playing Sunday night and then turning around and playing on Thursday morning? No, you're not. You don't make your schedule. You play who's on your schedule. And the Bears lost to the only rough loss they've had is to the New England Patriots, who are starting to run away with their division. You had a rough loss to the Miami Dolphins, who are in second place in that division. And then you had a game you just gave away to the Green Bay Packers, who have Aaron Rodgers. Like, you beat everybody else. Like, whether or not you think, the Buffalo Bills, they beat up on the Minnesota Vikings. They beat them badly. You beat that team badly. The Jets had, have played well earlier in that season, and the Bears crushed them. The Lions, they beat the New England Patriots, and you just destroyed them. I don't know what else to do. They're like, oh, you didn't beat Arizona by enough. Well, you know what? The Kansas City Chiefs, everybody's darling, they didn't beat up on them today. And, so you just play the teams you can play, and you beat them. That's all that matters. It's not style points or how many points you beat them by. If you beat a bad team by 1 point, it counts as a win. If you only lose by 1 point to a great team, you know what? Still counts as a loss.
Competitive teams will beat the teams they're supposed to beat. And if they have proved one thing for certain, is that they are a competitive team. There's no doubt about it. They're competitive and much improved. And you know what? Any team from the last few years before this one, under Fox or under Trestman, I bet you that they would have lost some of these games that this Bears team has won.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. But I don't really have anything else to talk about, and yeah, I think we owe the Blackhawks a couple more days in the Culleton era before we pick that apart.
Yeah, I'll just say this: I can't be mad at the coach. He's brand new. He's trying to adjust things. But man, that team is just a wreck right now. It's bad. It's really bad.
Yeah, it's bad. Corey Crawford is not playing well, and the defense is not playing well around him, and that's just a recipe for trashery.
Yeah, I don't really want to talk much else about them other than just it's ugly.
Yeah, so I guess that's going to do it for this episode. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit us up on social media at ShyFanPat1. at Swerski Sports, facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or the TuneIn app. Your job this week is to share this podcast with at least one friend that you know that likes Chicago sports. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like timber New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.